Y'all want to hear about some of the reviews that the Ordinary Bruja has been getting? Stick around. Today, I'm going to talk about, I think, is it two or three in particular? It's a couple that they said something along the lines in their review that they either hadn't read a story from a Latine author or a Dominican author, and that they enjoyed this one quite a lot. And now, while my goal has been when it comes to writing to connect with other people, so that way the scars and the resiliency that they see within my characters, they can see it in themselves as well, or they can go back to a place where they may have experienced something like that and come through in the other end and feel hopeful, right? And better about their situation. So that has been my primary goal. That really is what keeps me writing, is just that connection and that upliftment that my stories could bring to a reader. But this this was an unexpected side quest that I am also happy to be on. I don't know why. I never thought about it, or perhaps I took it for granted. I thought that if people pick up my book, that they'll innately have picked up other Latine author books or other Dominican author books in there, because all my main characters are Dominican. You know, like that is heavily, annotated in there. The Dominicanness of it, being part of the diaspora of Dominican and Latino community, those things are there. So I just figure that people were gravitating because I'm not the only one that they have read within that hold those identities. But I guess I was wrong, and this was like an unexpected but really happy moment when I saw that. And I'm not gonna lie, like I had to stop. I stopped what I was doing when I saw that, because NetGalley sends you alerts when you get a review, and so does Booksprout. I think the only one, well, BookFunnel, there's no way to put reviews in there, so the reader will have to put it in their favorite platform. For those other two platforms, Booksprout and NetGalley, it sends you an alert to your email saying the Ordinary Brew had just received a review. I think that's what it says. That's the verbiage there. And when I go and open these and I read them, I remember I read it like two or three times, and I called my husband and I was like, babes, happy Latina Heritage Month to me. I was like, did you know, hear this? And I was like super excited because in that moment I realized that for those readers, I was the first that they had read that hold those identities, but that I may not be the last because they enjoyed this story. So they may in the future pick up another Latina author or another Dominican author. And I've always felt until that moment kind of like, I don't want to say less than, but kind of like those kind of things wouldn't happen to me because I'm a newbie author. I've just been writing for 5 years, not long enough. And there's other authors that have been in the game way longer, right? Writing better stories and things of the nature, way more popular than me, that's for sure. And I just didn't think that this book will bring me those kind of comments, where I'll be the first Latina or the first Dominican author that they read. It was super surprising, but in a positive way. And then I started thinking about that responsibility as well, to have been that for those readers and to possibly be that for other readers. And it created this sense of urgency in me, and this sense of meticulousness, and just ensuring that what I put out there is the very best that I could produce, even as an independent author who is doing mostly everything. I'm a one marketing woman, it's all here. Now, I don't do editing by myself. I always knew like that is not my forte. I'm not even gonna embark on that thing. So, writing, doing graphics on Canva, you know, putting some social media posts. I like that. I've been doing that for my own personal stuff, for a while, but editing a whole manuscript, like, no. I would gladly give you some dollars for that. But other than that, I hold many hats, and realizing that I'm like, Jesus, I'm really gonna have to be even more meticulous, right? Be even more aggressive about what I do, because they are readers that will experience a Latine or Dominican author for the first time with my books. And I'm glad I did what I did. I gave it like two more passes, for the Ordinary Brew. I refreshed the files on NetGalley and then the other ARC platforms, because I just want those readers to get the very best possible experience with my book. And I'm glad I did that, because I understand that the responsibility is there to make sure that we open doors, and not necessarily because I'm like this really popular and experienced author, because I'm not all the way at the newbie level here, but because that's how it is. It just so happens that it may be my story that they read first. So it's very important for my stories to be polished, to be the best that they can be. In saying that, I'm a big believer that feedback is a gift. So please, if there's anything that you see in there, in my books, I mean, don't be shy, don't be afraid. Put it on your reviews. That alerts other readers of it as well, and they can help them make a decision of whether to read the book or not. And that goes for so-called positive and so-called negative things, which, if you're being objective about it, I don't think we should use those words positive or negative, because the feedback is a feedback. You're just saying how something didn't hit you the way that you expected it to, and how something did. Something met your expectations, while something else within that book or whatever it is that you're reviewing met or did not meet your expectations. And I think that is something that is neither negative or positive. I think is something that is very helpful for reviewers, and it's also helpful for authors, because while I don't comment, I read some of it. Not all of it. I think I may have missed quite a lot, but I read them, and I take note of those things that several readers have said that they like, and several readers had a hard time with, and I just take that into consideration. I make a note of it, and then I look at it, right, with a level of distance, and ask myself, like, is this something that I would change, or is it my writing style, right? If it's like grammar errors and stuff like that, obviously that's something that needs to be changed. Oh, that's not like, yeah, incorrect grammar. It's not my writing style. It's just an error that was there that I will need to fix. But like italics for Spanish, I don't make Spanish or Spanglish italics. So if somebody flags that as being incorrect or improper grammar, I would ignore that, because that's just how I write my books. That's my part of my style sheet per se when it comes to my writing, and things of that nature. Or if people have like a hard time seeing Spanish or Spanglish, that doesn't mean that the next book will be completely in English, because then, once again, that's not my characters, right? Those are not the stories I'm writing. Those are not the characters that I am putting myself into to write their stories. So that kind of feedback, I'll be like, well, this person perhaps is not my ideal reader. But that's how I look at feedback. I see it as a gift, as something that can help me, but mostly help other readers find my book, right? Or reject the book if they know for sure, based on what they read, that it's not for them. And that's okay, because I feel that for those that reject it, others will find it. It's almost like they're closing the door and it's opening it up for other people, to find it. Because a lot of the time, those reviews, when people are like, and you could say that's mean. When people are like, oh, it's so confusing. There was so many Spanish words in there. It's not for me. And then there'll be another reader that will read that. I'll be like, hey, I love that. I want to learn Spanish. This will be a fun way to learn a few words. Or I speak a little bit of Spanish. Let me see if I can understand what is in this book. Or I come from the diaspora where my primary or my mother language is Spanish, but I had let go of it a little bit, so let me read this book. So I that's how I feel about reviews. And while the quote unquote negative ones sometimes sting, I think it's stinging the ego more than anything else. Nothing that is like super important. I don't think the ego is that important. I take away like the things that are important to me, which is how can I make this book, if I still have the chance, right? Or the next book even better. So that way I can open up the doors for these readers that I will be the first time, either Latine or Dominican or a diaspora writer that they read, you know? So that was an amazing. I'm still like kicking myself over these reviews of overly positive, you know. Even though I said I'm not going to use those words, but overly positive, and I'm taking note of that as well as about what they like, so I can make sure I don't lose that for the other books. But thank you. Thank you for taking the time to read The Ordinary Bruja. Thank you for taking the time to review The Ordinary Bruja. I don't take that for granted. Your time is precious. Our times are precious. So when you do that, you make me feel love because you took time to hold something that I created and analyze it and write about it, or put some stars next to it. That is amazing. And I thank you for that gift. Bye.